good to be back here. Eastover Fire Company number 4. Thank the folks standing behind me for their service. This firehouse, as he mentioned, was really damaged during Sandy, and it was the folks in this community, more than anybody else, who helped to restore this firehouse and get so many things that have been done here in Toms River done the right way. And I'm here today because all these communities that were impacted by Sandy still face tremendous costs for things that were done during Sandy and emergency protective measures that they've taken in the aftermath of the storm. So here in Toms River, for instance, many residents were rescued, temporary shelters were set up, hazardous areas were barricaded, and a seemingly endless amount of sand and other debris from the storm was removed from neighborhoods all across this town. At the time, local governments were reimbursed by FEMA for 90% of the costs and had to find a way to pay for the remaining 10% of the costs. For a number of communities, that 10% match started to creep close to and even exceed $1 million because of the sheer magnitude of their storm recovery projects, resulting in a financial burden for local governments and, by extension, a burden for the local taxpayers. Rather than have property taxes increase in these hard-hit communities, the state stepped up to cover these costs through the FEMA non-federal cost share match program. So now, beginning on Monday, August 29th, local governments in the 9 most impacted counties who have a 10% match for debris removal projects or emergency protective measures can apply to Commissioner Richmond and the folks at DCA for funding to reimburse those costs as well. With this initiative, the state is prepared to fully fund the 10% match for all projects that are deemed eligible into the match program. So there are potentially 405 local government entities that may be eligible for reimbursement, and over 1,000 Sandy recovery projects that would be eligible as well. If all the eligible local government entities submit applications for all the eligible projects, the total funding universe for the program will be about $42 million that the state is ready to provide. Toms River alone, this is the good news why Keller is all dressed up today. Toms River alone is eligible for $2 million in funding, and Ocean County government, and I see Freeholder Haynes here smiling, is eligible for $10 million in funding from the state. She says very good. I'm glad. Our announcement today about the match program comes 2 months after HUD's decision in the Obama administration not to approve the state's request for a 4th round of essential services grants. That's the program that we use to help communities devastated by Sandy to continue to provide the critical services they needed to provide without having to raise property taxes. The grants also provided a foundation for the state's housing and economic recovery programs to succeed in that they allow our communities that were devastated to remain attractive, encourage families and businesses to stay there and to rebuild, not to leave. Unfortunately, without HUD's approval, the state cannot provide 2016 essential services grants to local entities that could have helped offset some of the financial impact after Sandy. So after HUD's decision, the governor's office went back to work to try to figure out a way around it to be able to provide funding to folks despite this decision. Because the match program is already a component of the state's action plan, the $42 million can be distributed without any further approvals from HUD, just approvals from the new most popular guy in this area, DCA Commissioner Chuck Richmond. And it's going to help us get that money out quicker than we normally would be able to under the HUD process. I know that's welcome news to the mayor, to the freeholder, and to the other people in communities who have been so devastated by what's gone on. I had another Sandy briefing this week, and it's really extraordinary what these communities and our state have been able to do in rebuilding in less than 4 years. The REM program is now 2/3 to completion. That's an extraordinary achievement. And for the overwhelming majority of people who are not yet back in their homes, those folks are either already being rebuilt or have made the decision not to rebuild. And so the REM program has been getting people back into their homes. If you look up and down the shore in the business community, you see that these businesses are rebuilt and going. And last summer, they had the best summer that they've had in Jersey Shore history. And given the weather we've had this summer, I'm pretty confident we're looking towards another record-breaking summer. That's all good news. You see that our local businesses are investing in the shore communities as well. You go to Seaside Heights, and I see the chief here. You look at the investment that the Storino family is making on the boardwalk in Seaside Heights. They are committed to the full recovery of Seaside Heights, and they are putting tens of millions of dollars in private capital to work in Seaside Heights to rebuild that to become an even greater tourist attraction than it was prior to Sandy. And you can give examples of that up and down the shore. You look at the things that are happening in Seabright and the extraordinary recovery in that community. We're seeing really great results in less than 4 years. When you look at what's happening in Louisiana today, the contrast of what happened post-Katrina, and that many of those communities post-Katrina have still not recovered from the storm in 10 going on 11 years. We will always find critics, but I think if you look across the country, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, post-Katrina, and compare it to what's happened here, or even compare what's happening here in New Jersey to what's happening in New York, we are well ahead of any of those folks in terms of our recovery. And that's because the state provided real leadership. We partnered with the federal government in an unselfish way, and we had the support of our county and local officials to do all this in the right way. So I'm really proud of what we've been able to accomplish here. And lastly, I'll take some questions. We've also cracked down on fraud in the Attorney General's office as well. As amazing as it would seem to so many of us, there are many people who have used this as an opportunity to try to feather their own nest improperly. And I'm proud that the Attorney General has brought dozens of cases against people who have committed Sandy fraud, because every dollar that goes to a fraudster in Sandy is a dollar that's not available to go to a family or a business that was really harmed by it. We're going to have lots of announcements in September regarding things like our energy resilience program that helps to make the state stronger and better for the next storm. And I was happy to hear today that we originally started with over 3,000 easements that needed to be obtained by the state to do our dune protection program. We are now down to 125 easements which need to be obtained, predominantly in just 4 communities: Bayhead, Point Pleasant Beach, Manahawkin, and Berkeley Township. And those are all in litigation, and I believe easements will be obtained in all of those no later than the late part of this year or the early part, meaning January, February of 2017. Great news is for this part of the area, Tom, we expect in the next 2 to 3 weeks that the Army Corps of Engineers will bid the last dune project, which will cover this area, going from both inlets, and that will be the last of the Jersey Shore dune projects that need to be done. And then we will have, when it's completed, a complete dune system running from the Bay Shore to Cape May, so that if we ever do get another devastating storm like Sandy, we'll be much better prepared.